tell my daughter this. She's not listening.
Well, welcome to Zach's project, Wide World of Sports. You enjoy.
Okay, so what I wanted to do for my fall experience is I wanted to grow in the virtue of leadership, specifically through athletics. So what I did with that, I had originally planned to help set up like a Bible study with the basketball team throughout the season, but as things kind of started progressing with that, things kind of just fell through and nothing really came out of that. Um, so what I ended up doing instead is I helped out a baseball youth clinic over at Foothills for a couple weeks, and I just helped the kids learn how to like hit, pitch, catch, and throw, and just help teach them like the basics of baseball and how to like show good sportsmanship and have a good attitude towards the other kids and towards the sport they're playing. And so for my spring one, I wanted to learn more about my major that I'll be studying next year at Grand Canyon University, which is sports management. So what I did for that is I shadowed another person that works at Foothills. His name is Brandon. He is the sports assistant at Foothills. His role is like kind of just help plan like all the youth sports events that go on there. So like he helps plan like the flag football, baseball, basketball, soccer, the things like that. He just helps make sure that there's like volunteers there that are helping out, and then that like the kids are on the right teams, and that they have refs for the games, and that they have the coaches where they need them. So with that, I also interviewed him. So he had kind of a similar path that I've taken. He had like a big passion for sports growing up as a kid. He has two other older brothers. They both grew up like watching him playing sports all the time. He played baseball in high school. He's a big soccer person now, but actually he didn't play in high school, which is something he kind of regrets a little bit. But he also he's been working at Foothills for a year in his current role. He also works for the Rockies as a security guard, and so he's been doing that job for 6 years now, and he only does it on the weekends now because he just felt like it was kind of hard to balance like doing that and also like helping out at the church and with the high school ministry as well. But he still enjoys it. But he towards like the end, like around 4 or 5 years, he just felt like he wanted something more like relational and like help out like younger generations. So that's where Foothills came into play. With that, I also wanted to find out like how I go about this career in like a Christian way. And so he said to like just kind of like bring it up in conversations that you have with your coworkers or your friends, and just like find the balance between like forcing Christianity down someone's throat and like not bring it up at all. So just like try to find like that perfect balance there. So with that, he went to Metro and got his degree in sports management. He said that was a really good program there. He also just kind of talked about like his past and how like working for the Rockies kind of like something like family business in a way, because like he didn't really have to like interview for the role. He just, since his two older brothers did the same thing, he just kind of got his way in there. But he said like it was somewhat hard to like start bringing up his Christian faith in the workplace, but like as you start to get to know them better, then they'll like be more accepting to it and more open to hearing it. So with that, I also interviewed another person who goes to my church. His name is Jeff. Jeff has like a completely drastic different story than what Brandon had. So like Brandon's over here like growing up in like sports and stuff like that. But then you have like Jeff over here who like one event that like really impacted his life was the Columbine shooting. He was actually a sophomore at Columbine when it happened. He was in there trying to find his way out, and he wasn't a believer at the time, and so he was just trying to like work his way out, and eventually he found a group, and they found like an escape route through like the foreign languages department, and so he just didn't think he'd make it out that day, but it was by the grace of God that like he got out of there. he works at the Edge Ice Arena, so he's more on like the hockey side of things. So he kind of does what Brandon does at like for the Ridge, stuff like that. He helps like plan all the events there and make sure like that everything's in the right place and that people are doing like what they're supposed to be doing. And so like with that, kind of like his path towards Christianity was more along the lines of like he was a big partier and like didn't really focus on grades too much in high school, and so that's kind of ended up how he picked like his major. He picked his major in recreation because he only had like a few options to choose from because his grades were so bad. And so that's kind of how he ended up counted that. And then he had been married for 7 years and almost got divorced because he was becoming a little selfish and like controlling of the marriage. But he ended up finding the Rock, and ever since his first time going there, he hasn't missed like a single week. He talked about a little bit like his path towards Christianity and like how it, like Brandon, it was kind of hard to bring up at first, but like as you start like building those relationships with the people you work with and get to know them like better, it's easier to like open up. And so he's invited several of his like coworkers to church, and they've actually taken him up on his offer. So that's been something that's been really cool. He also talked about how, like, for anyone that's wanting to like go in this field, to like build up your connections because it's somewhat of a small industry, and so like with that, like to not burn bridges or like make anyone mad, but like just build up your connections and make yourself like more marketable. Like with anything, work hard, learn more about what you're doing, because whenever he first started out in this position, he wasn't necessarily like sure what exactly he was doing, but as he started like researching into it more, it became like a lot easier to focus on. So for those were the interviews that I did. I did a research side of it. So I was more focused on my major. I read a couple books, Tim Tebow's Playing with Purpose and Carl Mecklenburg's Heart of a Student Athlete. Kind of what I took away from those two is that like professional athletes like that are basically kind of like we are whenever they first start out. They have like a dream and they take like the necessary steps needed to achieve that dream. And so they just surround themselves with like the right amount of people, or the good amount of people that will like build them up instead of tearing them down and not believe in them. I also read a book dealing with the leadership called Truth About Leadership, and kind of what I took away from that is that you could make a difference no matter what your circumstances may be. So like even if you don't think you have what it takes to be a leader, I believe that every one of us has some sort of leadership quality in us. We just have to dig deep and try to like find it if we want to go down that path. And I also just researched more into my major and how like future jobs I could potentially have, and like with the program I'm going into next year at Grand Canyon, it's really cool because every single like major sports organization is within like about half an hour of campus. Like the Arizona Cardinals, Arizona Diamondbacks, Phoenix Suns, Phoenix Coyotes, they're all like half an hour away. So it creates like a lot of good internship opportunities and just opens up a ton of potential future jobs for me. So for my lessons that I learned, I had the 3 Ps, patience, perseverance, and passion. I'll start with patience. Patience took a lot in this one because, especially with the like the original leadership thing falling through of not being able to do the Bible study, even with that, just like waiting to hear back from the guy I was gonna do it with, and how like things just kind of ended up not working out with that. And also even with the thing I did to replace it, like just being around the kids and having the patience needed to like not get frustrated or angry with them and like because sometimes they'd go off and like do their own little thing, you had to like kind of just bring them back into like the mix and get them to like focus with it. Okay, so perseverance is next. With that, there were a lot of times during this project I just wanted to like quit and be done with it, and I was just so done. I'm like, why do we have to do something like this? But my initial motivation was that it mostly focused on the grade and not necessarily like the project itself. So I'm just like, oh, it's my final. I just need to get through it so that way I can move on to college next year. But like as I slowly started to like actually do the tangible things to like get myself to where I needed to be successful with this project, it just helped me realize that like this will help future classes like you guys who will be doing this in the future probably, and how like what we do this year, since this is all new for us and we weren't really sure what we were getting ourselves into at the beginning, but to just like keep pushing through and fighting even though it may suck sometimes. And then the passion side of things, I've always had a really big passion for sports. Ever since I was a little kid, like even my imaginary friends as a little kid were like professional basketball players, like of the early 2000s, like Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Tim Duncan, guys like that were like my imaginary friends growing up. And like my whole room is like completely decked out in like tons of sports memorabilia and like just a ton of like autographs from like Dan Marino. And I have a really cool story. So we were here for a Braves Rockies game in like 2007, I think the same year they went to the World Series. And I got 5 baseballs that day, and one of them was actually signed by Todd Helton. And it's a really cool story because like the ball boy like went to grab it, but like he didn't let the signature finish drying. So like it's a one of a kind item because there's like a small thumbprint you could see like in the middle of the autograph. So it's just a really cool story to tell. And I've gotten like several autographs from other Rockies players saying like from Cargo to like Dexter Fowler. I went to Rockies Fest and actually like got to do a little bit of like a broadcasting thing, and they made like a little DVD of it. And so one major factor of like getting me to that place was my dad's dad. I've been told, I didn't really know him too well, but like my parents have told me stories about how like he was a big sports fanatic and like how he was kind of like I am, where he was just around like collecting stuff and building up, like having room filled with all this sports stuff. I also attribute it to my dad a little bit because we used to collect like sports cards, and we'd go like these trading card shows, and we would just like try to trade cards, and we'd like rip open boxes of packs that had like a certain autograph in there that everyone was trying to find, and it was just something me and him kind of bonded over a little bit. So with that, I kind of want to draw it to a conclusion by putting out some challenges to all like the underclassmen here. I just want to challenge you guys to like develop good habits at an early age. I know for me, a really big problem has been procrastination throughout my high school career. Like I had planned to have this project done like so much earlier than I did, but I was like into the last couple weeks before it was due, and I'm like scrambling to try like do this thing and like make sure that the speech is good and like making sure the manuscript's in on time. But if you just develop those good habits early, then eventually they'll carry with you to high school and you'll be more successful. I also want to challenge the parents here, or adults that may have kids in the future, to just not put pressure on your kids. I know for me, my parents have always supported me in whatever I'm done. They like don't try to make them like be a doctor or a lawyer because like you were a doctor or lawyer. Like just help them like find the things they're passionate about and like just help them take the necessary steps needed to like achieve that. And so with that, I just want to close by reading a verse from Jeremiah 29:11. It says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." That's kind of been my life verse for about 5 years, and especially became more real to me after I rededicated my life to Christ. And so with that, I just kind of like look at that and like put my faith and trust in God and know that like He'll help me, like He'll lead me down the right path. He won't lead me astray. He won't lead you guys astray because He knows the plans He has for you, and you just have to like trust in Him and know that like He'll always be there for you and He'll never let you go. And with that, I'd just like to thank you all for coming, and I believe we'll enter into a time of questions.
Has any questions or comments for Zach? Say them. Please repeat them to the mic.
Yes.
What's your dream job? That's exactly what I was going to ask him too.
Okay. What is my dream job? At first, it was more like along the lines of like broadcasting and like sports broadcaster, analyst, or like just announcer in general. My dream job was to like work at ESPN. That kind of changed a little bit like the past week because some of you might have saw if you follow sports at all, but like a ton of people got laid off at ESPN over this past week that have been working there for like 10 plus years. So that's kind of just the reality of like the work field right now. But like what I'm working towards now is mostly like the behind the scenes. So like more like the analytical side of things and like maybe like sports agent or something like along those lines.
What was the hardest part of this project?
What was the hardest part about this project? Probably actually doing stuff with it. Like I kind of talked about earlier, I just didn't really have much of motivation to initially do it. But it was just mostly that the grade kept driving me to actually get it done. So probably actually like going out and doing the things that I did with it.
What was the biggest surprise you discovered doing this project? What was something that just totally like, wow, I didn't realize that?
The biggest surprise in this project was probably just seeing like how I interviewed Brandon and Jeff, and to see like that whole new side of the sports world kind of open up, because I never really looked into like that side of it before and never really thought about more like the recreational side of things. So because they both, or Brandon at least got his degree in sports management, so that was probably a big surprise.
Do you think you'll see yourself working with kids in the future?
Do I think I'll see myself working with kids in the future? Possibly. I'm not quite sure yet. I will probably have a better answer as I start college, and actually start like thinking about which side I actually want to pursue.